IoT is a rapidly growing technology that is currently producing around 50 zettabytes, or 50 billion terabytes of data each year across the world. We expect around 80 to 100 zettabytes of data by 2025. All of this is way more data than any blockchain could handle, and trying to process all of it on most blockchains would be prohibitively expensive. To get an idea of what traffic would look like on a blockchain from IoT data, we need to calculate a TPS. So the average data packet size for an IoT device you might be familiar with, including smart plugs, health meters, motion sensors, or smart watches, is on the order of 50 to 500 bytes. For industrial IoT devices that include things like gas meters, environmental sensors, energy optimizers, location trackers, or predictive maintenance, you're looking at about 100 to 150 bytes per data packet, accounting for a payload that is characterized by things like the device ID, the timestamp, and whatever data is being transmitted. So each packet has overhead that may include higher layer headers, media access control or MAC layer overhead, and typical control signaling for uplink to a mobile network. But overall, you're looking at about 250 to 300 bytes per data packet for massive machine type communication through industrial IoT devices. If we consider all IoT devices to be industrial, which is what most blockchain applications will likely focus on, this data frequency and packet size translates to roughly around 6 trillion data transactions per second. Of course, many of these IoT networks will never run on a public blockchain, and many IoT customers will never have a need to incorporate blockchain technology, but there still is a very, very large amount of data being generated, which can be seen as an excellent opportunity for blockchain in any application that would benefit from having an immutable and time-stamped audit trail of data, cryptographic proof that data came from a particular sensor, decentralization to minimize the risk of a single point of failure that may compromise your network, interoperability with different communication standards, or scalability beyond the limits of centralized cloud-based architecture. We can imagine several ways in which Accumulate can add value to IoT networks, which include pruning big data, giving secure digital identities to IoT devices, running private chains underneath public network, and using credits to minimize hacker incentives and to help companies budget IoT activities over a long period of time. While data entries on Accumulate are cheap, at only 1/10 of 1 penny per transaction, you can also write data to Scratch data accounts, which are even cheaper at about 1/100th of 1 penny per transaction, or $0.0001. In a Scratch data account, all data is written to the pending chain on Accumulate, which is only available for about 2 weeks, after which time the data is compressed into a single proof and written to the blockchain. More precisely, transaction hashes and intermediate hashes are pruned, but the root hashes that summarize the state of a Scratch account remain. Any user with access to the transaction hashes can cryptographically prove the data in a Scratch account by redriving the root. You can also use Scratch accounts in conjunction with off-chain programs to minimize the data footprint generated by your IoT network, while simultaneously increasing granularity for important data. So for example, you could define the properties of data that meet a certain threshold, like a temperature fluctuation, write that data directly to the main chain at a higher cost, but write all other data below that threshold to a Scratch data account for a much cheaper price. Every person, organization, or device can be assigned a secure digital identity we call an Accumulate Digital Identifier, or ADI. Factom did this previously with IoT devices in a pilot-scale experiment for both the Homeland Security and Department of Energy, which prevented hackers from spoofing sensor data. By giving IoT sensors their own identities on the blockchain, you can obtain cryptographic proof that data came from a particular sensor in their network. Because ADIs are URL addressed and human readable, it also becomes easier for humans to assign meaningful names to every device and manually troubleshoot problems. All entries that are written to Accumulate are paid for in credits, which are a non-tradable, non-transferable token with a fixed US dollar price. The only way to create credits is by burning Acme, which is the native token of Accumulate. You can load up your IoT devices with credits And because a fixed quantity of credits are required to pay for things like data transactions, token transactions, identity creation, or key updates, you're able to budget your expenses over a long period of time. This wouldn't be possible with other tokens on other blockchains that can vary in price. Because credits aren't a cryptocurrency or a stable coin by definition, companies don't have to worry about regulatory concerns. Because credits have no value outside of the Accumulate ecosystem, an IoT device with a balance of credits is not an attractive target for a potential hacker. Accumulate also recognizes that some companies prefer not to or are not allowed to transmit data from an IoT device to a public blockchain. While it's relatively easy to fork the Accumulate protocol, make it private, then submit indecipherable hashes to the main network, you can also create private chains within public chains. That's because we have an identity and key hierarchy, and we distribute the rule keeping at the various nodes in this hierarchy. So putting this all together, Accumulate gives the owners of IoT networks the flexibility to make their data transactions public or private, the ability to budget their operations over a long period of time with credits, and also to write data to the blockchain as cheaply and with as much granularity as your application requires.